So we got a little bit of news today to get to, and that is, and that is, well, because there's not much news to get to today. But what news we do have to get to is starting with some updates on injured superstars, one from NXT and one from one from AEW. The one from AEW is AEW star and former Varsity Blonde Griff Garrison, who has been missing from AEW programming for about a month, and well, basically has fallen on some hard times over the last couple of months with his unstable booking, I guess, in the tag team with Brian Pillman Jr., especially since Julia Hart joined the House of Black. It's led to questions of the futures for both Pillman and Griff Garrison in the tag team division. But the fact of the matter is, Griff Garrison, well, we didn't know that he was injured, but apparently Griff Garrison did post on his social media that he is resting up and has been on the shelf since uh, that he underwent surgery. It is unclear what surgery he had, but I would like to wish Griff Garrison a speedy recovery, and that I hope that we will see him again soon. And as far as the other side of things, with Quincy Elliott, NXT standout Quincy Elliott, he has been on the shelf as well since October with an undisclosed injury and is now back with NXT because he just competed this past weekend at the house show events. So it is good to see Quincy Elliott back as well, working at the house shows for NXT. Again, much like our friend Griff Garrison, it is unclear what kept Quincy Elliott on the shelf, but what we do know is Quincy Elliott is 100% now. And the reason why I'm playing TAW instead of WWE is because there really isn't much news today, so I wanted to try and do it a little bit different. And the last time I did it with WWE, the video ran a little bit long in the tooth, so I'm changing things up. And also maybe the fact that I spent a lot of time talking about one subject, so I may separate that out into a portfolio of sorts instead of instead of basically I'm trying something new. Let's leave it at that. But also a little bit of news from ringside, uh, from ringside news. Yeah, that's what it was. That this makes a lot of sense in my opinion. It's based around the story that came out earlier this week that Triple H was underwhelmed with some of his recent hires. But as the statement from Ringside News says, that Triple H would never put it out there if he was underwhelmed or how he felt. If there was any disappointment, Triple H would never admit it to anyone. Not right now. It would reflect so badly on him. I completely agree with that because think about how it would look to Triple H or for Triple H if he's putting out there that he is disappointed in some of the signings that he made within less than 6 months of signing that talent. In my opinion, it would reflect poorly on that talent, and it would reflect poorly on Triple H because basically what you're saying is you made a mistake signing those people, and you just signed them. So my question is, if you are already I understand that you may have expected something more, or whatever the case is, but if you're gonna pass judgment on those people right out of the gate, then what was the point of getting them in the first place if you're not gonna let them find their footing and find their, stable ground, I guess, for lack of a better word, before before you put them under the microscope, and it is far too soon to judge Hit Row, Karrion Cross, Scarlett, the Good Brothers, Johnny Gargano, Bray Wyatt, Emma, Tegan Knox, the amount of people that have come back. I think the best way to put it is that there was no build up. It was the surprise factor for a lot of the people outside of Bray Wyatt. And because of that, you expected a little bit more to come instantaneously than what happened. So I think that may have been the cause of some, or maybe the cause of some fans' tepid opinion of the recent arrivals within WWE or the recent returns within WWE. That would be like me saying, from this standpoint, that I just signed Abyss, but I'm disappointed. Well, I haven't done anything with Abyss, and I know where I want to go with Abyss. It's just getting them there. So why would I be disappointed that it's not? You know what I mean? But it makes sense. It makes sense because from Triple H's standpoint, it would not make sense to allow that sort of to express that opinion in a public forum because it would bury the talent that he brought back and bury himself, in my opinion. But on a short bit of news or a small bit of news, quick news hit, it is that Kevin Nash actually worked recently a 6 hour day with WWE. It is unclear what Kevin Nash worked on, but it is, I mean, that's a long time to be working, that's a long time to be working with WWE. So it must have been something, pretty crazy. It's pretty significant. That's the word. It must have been something pretty significant if he spent that long there. But I also think it is more likely that Kevin spent all that time there, not just working on one project, but several. It would be interesting if one of the projects, or it would be nice if one of the projects that he was working on had to do with some sort of a tribute to his friend Scott Hall, who passed away earlier this year. But I guess we will find out more information when the information is there for us to find out. The the most interesting news today is that Chris Jericho actually had the idea of what he did with Action Andretti this past week on Dynamite, where we saw the biggest surprise of 2022 when Action Andretti defeated Chris Jericho. But Chris Jericho wanted to do that concept with Jungle Boy back during the pandemic. But the reason why he scrapped the idea or did not do the idea is because of the fact that he did not want to have Jungle Boy get the victory over him in that position without the audience because he knew how much the audience being there would help the reaction. And in my opinion, seeing that situation in at Dynamite this past weekend with Action Andretti, it made the moment more special having people there. So Jericho made the right decision to not do it with Jungle Boy during the pandemic. And then by the time the crowds returned, Jungle Boy had already been established. So a victory over Jericho wasn't necessary. But it is good that it happened with Action Andretti. And I would love to see what happens on Dynamite because there has to be some sort of a follow up between Action Andretti and Chris Jericho, or even just Action Andretti becoming a more prominent piece of Dynamite because they need to do something to bring his momentum forward after defeating the former Ocho of Ring of Honor this past week on Dynamite. And I just hope it isn't where next week on Dynamite he loses to Chris Jericho because that would just undo everything that he had happened to him the week before on Dynamite. So I am intrigued and interested in seeing what happens this week on Dynamite with Action Andretti. But that is my thoughts on everything in professional wrestling. And I just want to point out that one bit of news that I was going to think about making a profile of, but maybe not the best way to start a profile, but just an interesting bit of news. 18-year-old Billy Starks, Space Jesus, is set to worked the recent edition of AEW Dark Tapings. 18 years old, and she's already a 4-year veteran in the professional wrestling business. It is insane that an 18-year-old, number one, has been working 4 years already in wrestling, and number two, is that she's 18 years old and has already worked for Game Changer Wrestling in Yoshi Pro in Tokyo Yoshi Pro, and Women's Wrestling Army, as well as now AEW, and will also be working for MLW at the MLW tapings in January of next year. But also she is the Black Label Pro Heavyweight Champion, which I believe Black Label Pro Wrestling is Sammy Callahan's promotion up in Indiana. But it is insane, in my opinion, that Billy Starks is 18 years old and not just working for AEW, but working in professional wrestling and is making waves. So props to her for that, and props to her for being able to live her dream at such a young age and make waves like she is at only 18. But this has been my thoughts on professional wrestling today. I will see you in the next one. Do not forget to ding dong that bell to always know when a new video is out. Till then.